So I'm going to, even as people are walking in, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the moderator of our next panel, Michael Allenby from Red Light Management in Charlottesville, Virginia, someone we got to know pretty well in the last couple of years. Manages a couple of acts from Memphis, but he's here. Beyond that, he's part of a major management company that's starting to do things in a different way these days, and thought he, along with the other panelists, could share some insight on new ways to monetize music in the digital age. So please welcome Michael Allenby, and he'll introduce the rest of the panelists.
Thank you. Separate, or I guess different from the other one, I'd like to spend, I don't know any of these people very well at all. I just met Mark a second ago, and Nita and I just met a couple minutes ago. But I think specifically for this, for the organizations that we have represented here, I think it would be good to take a good amount of time and just educate you guys on, Sound Exchange, BMI, and other organizations, what they can do for you, what these individual people do, so their comments are not as maybe not out of context. I'd also like to maybe towards the end, maybe move the question and answer up a little bit and make that a bigger portion, because I think as much as we love to talk about ourselves, because we're all wannabe rock stars, that's why we're in this business. I'd like, I think, everyone here is why we're doing this. So we'd love to, rather than going off into something that we think is fun to talk about, like to know what you guys would like to know. So I think I'll just let everyone introduce themselves. Okay. So I don't have to try to pronounce
my last name,
Raghuvanshi, which I did, the one that I did memorize.
Hey, nice. Hey, I'm Nita Raghuvanshi. I'm the Director of Artist Label Relations at Sound Exchange. And Sound Exchange, in a nutshell, is the nonprofit organization designated by the U.S. Copyright Office to collect performance royalties for recording artists and record labels when their records are used by certain digital services such as satellite radio, internet radio, and what I'll call digital cable TV radio. And what that means, and when I say recording artists, I mean the performers on the record, not the songwriters. And that's sort of the big distinction to get between Sound Exchange and what we collect versus what BMI and ASCAP and CSAC collect on behalf of their songwriters and publishers. And I think in a nutshell anyway, that's me, and we'll talk about it more later.
My name is Pierre Stacy. I'm an attorney at IOTA, and we're a digital distribution and marketing technology solutions company. Basically, we digital distribute about 1 million tracks to 100 different 300 different outlets, 100 different partners throughout the world. We also focus on the marketing side through platforms such as PromoNet, which is a way for our rights holders to pick a couple of different tracks, and it allows different bloggers, retailers, and other promotional partners to give away those tracks for free as long as they include a buy link, and then we can then track those buy links with the whole idea being we want to try to find ways to directly connect our labels and rights holders to their fans. So we can say if there's a blog that's actually giving away a lot of free downloads, we can say, hey, this is a good blog for your type of music. We're also working on other technology solutions with partners such as independent radio music promoters, doing something with Spectra that's going to allow them to build a platform that will allow independent music promoters and other people to basically digital download albums, so you won't have to service them and send them physical CDs through the mail, which can be very expensive. I think you'll see us basically doing similar things for our labels and rights holders. So rather than sending out, $2 CDs to everyone you want to have your CD before it's released, you can just create something online that will allow you to track and know exactly who downloaded what and when. And that's basically it.
Hey, my name is Mark Mason, and I'm the Director of Writer-Publisher Relations with BMI out of Nashville, Tennessee. And BMI is a performing rights organization, and we collect money from the users of music and pay all of that money out to songwriters and publishers. We're a not-for-profit corporation. Last year, we collected $840 million, and all of that went to our songwriters and publishers, less operating expenses, which was like 12%. So we act as a middleman between the owners and the users of music. We collect money from radio stations, television stations, hotels, bowling alleys, bars, skating rinks, funeral homes, amusement parks, anywhere that performs music publicly that's over 3,750 square feet by law has to pay the songwriter. So we are the middleman that collects the money, determined where the songs were performed, and pay it accordingly to the songwriters. So that's BMI's function. And my function at BMI is in the Writer-Publisher Relations Department. And I do generally two things. I help writers affiliate with BMI, help them start their publishing companies, help them register their works, help them understand this whole thing, help them get paid. And on the other side, do a lot of educational networking and performance opportunities to help our songwriters gain exposure and try to help them get out there. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you very much.
My name is Jonathan Alexander. I'm with Tappet. I'm the founder. And what Tappet is basically we created an engine that has the belief now that we want to see all labels and artists have the opportunity to showcase, sell, and have their stuff previewed on actual FM broadcast radio stations. Since coming out with this and our patent being approved, we have just signed Univision, we've signed Radio 1, we're in negotiations with Clear Channel, Westwood wants to resell the product, and our aim is to be able to have any artist that produces a song to be able to upload that to any radio station website around the world that fits in with that genre or market that you want to be able to do it with. So, we have created this engine a few years ago that allows already, it's considered one of the fastest for converting any song into whatever format and delivery of that to the consumer. And we built it like this because I'm the type that believes very much in regional music. So me being from Seattle, I know that Northwest rock is different than Southeast rock. West Coast hip hop different than East Coast hip hop, blah, 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 blah. And so what we're trying to do is make sure the artists in those communities understand that the radio stations are there kind of supporting this. And luckily, it's been the only product since my whole career, that every broadcast company we've spoken to has given us 100% acceptance on this and wanting to see them get more access to these artists and labels that are around their area and stop giving it away to iTunes and MySpace and all the other ones. So happy to be here also.
It's great. So I would encourage everyone, this is being videotaped, so I think you'll have access to all this information later on. So I would encourage you to write down questions for the panelists or from ideas that come up, so we can address those later. I work with a company called Red Light Management. We're based in the music mecca of tiny Charlottesville, Virginia. And that's because we manage the Dave Matthews Band, and that's how the company started. We now manage about 50 different bands. We have offices in New York, Nashville, Los Angeles. We have country, Christian, emo, indie, rock world. And in the Los Angeles office just signed Chris Cornell and Alanis Morissette, and our label, we have affiliated labels. Music Today is a merchandising fulfillment company that we're affiliated with, and ATO Records and Sign One, which that Radiohead record, we're in the mix of that whole thing as well, which is all interesting part of what's going on. But I am on the management side, so from this panel, I'm looking, probably more so than anyone else here, I'm looking to find out what these people have to say and what their input is, because as all of the other panelists have alluded to, it's whether you like it or whether you're having particular success or not, whether on a label end or an artist or whatever, it's an exciting time and it's a changing time. And all of these people here and yourselves as well are part of deciding what it's going to be. There's not some answer. I don't think any of these panels are going to tell you exactly how you break yourself as an artist or exactly how you create a label that's going to be successful in the future. But I think these conversations are going to define what those things are. So, the premise here is that that there are new and different ways to monetize music careers, and maybe increased interest in finding those things since the digitization of music has shifted sort of the traditional business model of labels. So I'm curious how, this shift, the whole digital world and internet landscape has affected your companies and your particular jobs.
I'll go first, yeah. Used to be that performers on records, as opposed to songwriters, did not get, and the owners, I should say, of the sound recording copyright, did not get a public performance royalty when their records were used by broadcasters, and that's actually still true, or venues, funeral homes, shopping malls, and that is still true. However, what happened was in 1995, Congress passed a law called the Digital Performance Right in Sound Recordings Act that created the first performance right for sound recording copyright owners and the performers who perform on recordings. But they limited it to digital services that were streaming music. So what has changed is definitely that there is now this new stream of revenue, and Sound Exchange then eventually became the sole designated agent to be the middleman to collect these royalties and make sure we get them out to the recording artists and sound recording copyright owners. It's really, I would say, it's really amazing and thrilling that this can happen, that we've at least gotten, it's opened the door to a performance right in the United States for these parties. The rest of the world does have what they call a full performance right. Pretty much everybody in the developing world, I should say. There'll be countries such as Rwanda and China and such who do not have all the protections of copyright law in place. And so those folks also are along the lines of the United States, who is also very behind in protecting recording artists and record labels. So the U.S. at least passed this law in 95 and then extended it in 98 to apply to internet radio under the DMCA to protect these rights. So that is one sort of area that I'm sitting here going, wow, we finally have a stream of revenue coming in, and that's certainly a new change in the digital landscape has provided in terms of monetizing music. And if you want to go on, I'll let you go on, because I could talk forever.
One of the things IOTA's, I guess, premise is like the guy who created the company was an engineer, so it's kind of like all about using technologies to give labels options and give them the ability to capitalize as much as possible on the different opportunities within the digital landscape. And what I mean by that is we have every label has their online digital dashboard. They log on, they get to see all the contracts we've ever negotiated and drafted. They get to actually look at the contracts, download them, review them. They get to look at a summary. They get all the statements online. But the biggest thing is, they get to decide whether they want to opt into these agreements or not. So we're doing a large amount of agreements. Since I've been there a little over a year. I think I've done on my own close to maybe 50. Like I said, maybe we have 100 overall. And whether it be ad support or whether it be subscription services, whether it be digital downloads, we're trying to, I'm getting a lot of pressure to do a lot of different deals, as many as possible. At the same time, one of the key things with us is we were probably the 5th biggest in the U.S. in terms of market share, digital revenue. Now there's a recent merger. Maybe we're arguing between where we're the 5th or 6th. So we have a lot of leverage. So, I'm trying to negotiate the best deal possible while at the same time giving our labels the opportunity to decide, hey, is this something we want to do or not? Maybe some labels don't want to be in a subscription service. Maybe some labels do not want to be in an ad support service. And I can go in details maybe a little later on about those different opportunities. But at least they're going to have the option. Same thing on the promo side with the promo net. It's everyone gets to decide whether they want to opt in or opt out of a promo deal. Maybe we're doing a promo deal with a social network that's going to allow this social network to give away the tracks. Maybe a label's I don't want to be involved in that. So then they have the opportunity and the ability to opt out. We also try to and me especially, I'm trying to focus a lot on the niche stores. And I want to help the niche stores have opportunities to grow because I think it's very important for these niche stores. The dance music genre has done an amazing job. I mean, they've got a lot of dance music stores out there. There are a lot of dance music stores. They're bringing in a lot of money off these dance stores. Beatport is probably arguably the best niche store out there. I mean, everyone wants their stuff on Beatport. And to be honest, Beatport doesn't even pay that well. But everyone loves it because everyone goes there to buy music. So that's kind of what we try to focus on. We want to get the big deals. My goal personally is to get, very, very competitive rates with the biggest services, as competitive with the major labels as I can. And at the same time, I want to try to negotiate as many different niche stores as possible because we have a lot of niche catalog, and I want to make sure it's out there with labels having the ability to basically, connect directly with the consumers. We also focus heavily on mobile. We're the only non-major label to have deals with the two big carriers in the U.S., which is Verizon and Sprint, the two biggest carriers that have their own services. We're at two carriers in Canada, Bell Canada and Rogers. We're about to close with a third, TELUS. Pushing very heavy in Europe to be on all the Europe networks, trying to work it out right now with Brazil, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's basically just a summary.
Pierce alluded to a lot of these other revenue streams that we'll touch on, a lot of the diversification. I am curious, though, Mark, I mean, a lot of these, the other panelists, their businesses are almost were either based or sort of sprung from this sort of new digital era, but BMI has existed, far before it. I mean, what are the changes in the digital age that you guys are experiencing, feeling, and having to diversify your work?
Well, from the performance royalty and BMI perspective, things have never been better. The record business is $3 billion or down, or 21% off its 1999 peak. Digital growth is not offsetting the recorded music's physical unit decline. But global music publishing has grown 22%. BMI's collections last year were the most ever for any performing rights organization. Performance royalties are growing at 7 to 10% a year. So performance royalties for songwriters and publishers, things are great.
Is that because it's easier to track digitally, or that there's more exposure?
There's more revenue streams.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I mean the collection, the places we collect from, they're growing and growing and growing.
Let's talk about some of those. I know Pierce alluded to a couple of them, but what are those? What are the ones that are?
Wow, our general licensing is growing. That's just the restaurants and establishments. It's growing across the board. Television is growing immensely. Last year, the ringtones used to be a performance royalty, and that's a $550 million a year business. That was taken away from the performance royalty side, and that's now a mechanical, but that still goes to the publisher. So ringtones are huge for publishers. That's $500-600 million a year. $65 million in ringback money coming in. So all these new things that are happening are benefiting songwriters and publishers.
Jonathan, how about your business is kind of core to this. But.
Yeah, and we actually took a little different approach with it because, I think what we see is if the industry said, wow, people are not buying as many hamburgers anymore, they instead of faulting McDonald's and faulting the cooks in there and everything, how they're cooking, they would say, guess what? Maybe people are tired of hamburgers. So we looked at the industry and said, okay, music sales are going down, and we're like, okay, well, why? Well, one of the first things a label will ask when the artist comes in there is like, well, who do you sound like? Instead of saying, okay, give me your music and let me see if this is something unique. And what we decided to do is really try to find the taste of specific communities, specific genres, subgenres of that, and allow more people to get access to that and create the statistical analysis and the metrics to give to the labels and give to the radio stations and say, hey, look, even though you think this go-go thing in D.C. is not big, Chuck Brown made $6 million last year on tour by himself. Oh, he also sold this many millions of albums, but you guys choosing not to play it because you want to cast people not doing this. I'm from Seattle, Washington, which is good and bad, but anyone that's from Seattle will tell you that, like Soundgarden ruled. Now even though Nirvana, Pearl Jam, got the credit and the love and everything, that's because basically they're the ones that did the label deals first, and they're the ones that really pushed them out there and made them bigger. But we want to know what actually those communities are doing, so we created statistical information in partnership with Big Champagne, down to the zip code level that we can tell you what people in Beverly Hills are listening to online, what people in Minnesota are purchasing. And this is extremely important because there's no longer one sound, one nation. It's multiple sounds, one nation. So we're trying to figure that out.
Yeah, someone asked a question earlier and alluded to what, how community is important, and there's definitely sort of through social networks, there's different definitions of community, but I think even regional community, tied into the live performance, and there's still a physical community that exists. It's interesting to see these, break down specifically through doing the demographic of a certain world.
And Ms. Rogan, she was with me on a panel where we actually had a guy that said the community means nothing, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Every time you see hot patterns come up, it's not New Orleans, Minnesota, Seattle, LA, Atlanta, and that has been the indicator and constant, all the way through, right? So for someone in a major label to say, well, it's not about that community, it's ridiculous, So, if you ask someone in Atlanta, what they think about their song not being hot in LA, they'll tell you, I don't care. People in the ATL love me, people out here love me, they understand it, and so I think we really need to kind of see statistically and kind of, for once, probably use the word segregation for something positive, which is when I want to hear great jazz, I want to be able to come into New Orleans and understand that I'm going to be able to find all this potpourri of music and stuff that's only secluded in this area. So we think it's pretty important anyway. So we're getting people to listen to us now about it also.
Getting back to what we sort of tied into, or was alluded by both Mark and Pierce, but talking about these different revenue streams and how they affect us. I mean, obviously the video games got alluded to earlier, TV, film placements, and how those are tracked, and ringtones. And so, all these different worlds. Is the tracking of those changing? Do you see? What are the additional ones? What are the ones that are sort of? These are the obvious ones that we see now. The ones that everyone's making. This is how some labels are sort of struggling to remain labels and make their money. But where do you guys see new ones popping up? How are these affecting you? Are these as big of a deal to your organizations and how you help artists?
Well, tracking is very important. What was really neat about this whole sort of, I'll just call it sound exchange royalties, is that we were dealing in a digital age, and there is the ability to track more easily than it used to be for performances, for broadcasts, for streams. And what we were able to get put into the regulations behind this law was that certain services, I'll say the digital cable TV radio folks and satellite radio folks, have to provide under regulation an exact playlist of what they play. So if you get played, if your record gets played, you get paid. There's an exact, what we call census data coming in. And so we can actually, you can have those monies that are attributed to you allocated and distributed. In the internet radio world, we're still constantly sort of fighting for exact census data. Right now on the books, there's an interim regulation that the Copyright Office put out saying that internet radio has to provide a 2-week sample for every 3 months. And so that is, in fact, what's in place. However, through the latest sort of webcasting negotiations, on the latest decision by the Copyright Office to increase the rates, through private settlement negotiations, we have been able to get some promises from certain of the large webcasters and various webcasters that they will provide census data to us, or at least strive to. So that's exciting that it's all becoming a little bit more that, it's not about hoping you show up in a sample and maybe you'll get a check. It's actually becoming more exact and easier to track. And I think we're working with the licensee community to find even more efficient ways of tracking that. Sound Exchange, with the help of our members, developed some really incredible systems to process these logs and process hundreds of millions of performances and figure out who gets what. And it's only through such a technological solution and this particular world in the 21st century that's able to happen. So everything is, folks, every local band I know of is getting a sound exchange check, which is amazing. Even bands who aren't playing anymore, but who had put a record out in the late 80s or early 90s or whatever are getting sound exchange checks. And because somebody somewhere, some webcaster or somebody somewhere is playing their record and still has a song that they like, and it's getting played and they're earning royalties, and that's great. And so I do want to say that if my little pitch here is, please, if you know any recording artists or indie record labels that are not signed up with Sound Exchange, or anybody you know, just find out if they are. Ask them if they've heard about this Sound Exchange thing, because we have money for thousands and thousands of recording artists and thousands of indie record labels or artists who own their own master rights. And we're just trying to make sure everybody knows to come register with Sound Exchange so we know where to find them and get their checks to them.
It seems that with the sort of acceleration of social networking, that there would be kind of it would be blowing up. I mean, you talked about BMI increasing the amount of. Are you guys seeing that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just got a chance to crunch my numbers finally because it's been so busy, and I've been wondering, why are we so busy? And I've seen the numbers, and it's really incredible that sort of the period of 05 to 06, I was seeing a certain amount of growth, and then from 06 to 07, it's been hundreds and hundreds of percentage increase of membership, of artists and labels coming to us. So I do feel like we have kind of, maybe through the news, through our PR campaigns, through marketing, through going out to panels like this, participating in conferences, going individually, and, going to management companies and lawyers, and making sure everybody's well versed on what is Sound Exchange and what that means for their clients and what that means for themselves. That they have, in fact, that we might have at least gotten closer to getting to that tipping point of folks now coming through the door by the thousands and signing up. So our numbers have hugely increased. And it is word of mouth marketing that helps the most. It's just folks telling other folks in the music industry, hey, go sign up with Sound Exchange. It's finally starting to catch on. So.
Jonathan, do you view internet radio and the sort of new radio, even terrestrial radio, but specifically with the world that you're in, being sort of a means to an eventual revenue stream? Additional revenue streams. Obviously, there's the royalty aspect.
We didn't put the focus on internet radio just because certain laws came out recently, which make it somewhat cost prohibitive for the average internet radio station owner to be successful. I mean, it's pretty costly for them to be able to operate, and which is somewhat a disservice to the aspiring artists, because if these guys can't pay the fees for this guy to be heard, then no one hears them, because basically the major radio stations aren't going to play them because they're unheard of, and it's really kind of I think a backward solution, right? So what we like to kind of see is, I think someone up here earlier, I think it was, the lady that was sitting right here, it stated, you have to understand what your needs are and what your wants are. And I think with so many different solutions coming up, I'm a huge fan of IOTA. We kind of partner with them in some certain things, but I think that they offer this cornucopia of services where they can tell the artist, look, these certain companies will do A, B, C, and D for you. And, I think that's what we have to try to direct people to understand, where they're going to get the most bang for their buck for the services. Internet radio, I'm a huge fan of. But once again, it was a symbol of, I think, an uprising against terrestrial radio, with what they were doing and what they weren't doing. But then, once again, terrestrial has the money to kind of limit, and make sure they don't push that huge deal on them also. So I feel bad for them, actually, really.
They have those big advertising dollars, whereas internet radio stations, I mean, there's like a $500 minimum fee for a BMI fee in order to do business, and that some don't want to pay. So, but for $1.50 a day, that goes back to the songwriters. That's not a big fee, I don't think. But some of the new streams we were talking about, why performance royalties are going up. I wanted to tell you, some of the new licensees and some of the places where songwriters and publishers are earning money that didn't exist 5 or 10 years ago are Echo Star Entertainment, Echo Star Sports, In Demand One, In Demand Sports, LodgeNet, NFL Sunday Ticket, MTV Internet, XM, Sirius, Subscription Music Services, Internet Jukebox, Pandora, AOL Radio, Real Radio, Yahoo Music, AOL Music, CBS Intertube, Sprint TV, Verizon Vcast, Napster, Rhapsody, and many others. So that's why performance royalties are going up, and that's helping all the songwriters.
Can I ask a question on that also? Is it also that more companies actually realize they're obligated to do this now, where before, I mean, any company just thought they could just grab a CD and just play it and had no idea. But now with all the RIAA activities and all just the amount of press, like you stated, is being put out there, that they'd rather, okay, let's be safe than sorry and do this legally before someone comes after us. I mean,
absolutely. Like she said, education is
it's
everything.
key. But there is still a long way to go because there are thousands and thousands of webcasters out there, and we're finding that there's only about 50 under the Small Webcaster Settlement Act that are paying. That are small webcasters, and we know there's thousands of webcasters out there, and it's a matter of more education happening there. I know there's going to be folks that are hobbyists, and they're saying, I have no ability to, I don't really run my webcasting service as a business. It's requiring them to be a business, put up some ad banners, find ways to generate revenue, even if they call themselves a hobbyist, to find those ways so that they can pay the minimum for the songwriting PROs and the minimum for Sound Exchange.
But what's sad though is like so many of those webcasters were really doing it out of just the love and the passion of the music. I mean, really, they weren't making any money from it. It was just like, I like this song, so I'm going to put it out there. And if you go to iTunes right now and look on the internet radio stations that you have listed, you go through half of them now, and half of them don't work. And once again, a lot of those people were just purists. So I wish there was a way we kind of work around that where, are the artists or someone available saying, look, we don't care about this. We just want someone to play and display our music and without, having to kill this format or whatever.
Yeah, I think it does come down to really sort of teaching those hobbyists and those small webcasters how to actually monetize their love and their passion for playing the records they play. I think there is a way that is pretty simple. I mean, it really is about opening up. Well, there's finding the lowest. Well, what is it? Building technologically certain play. I keep thinking of ad banners, but that there is a way to just sort of open a book, figure out how to post that and make it happen, or actually the companies that want to advertise, their IT departments, their technology folks will help to make that happen, to get their ad space out there. And I just think it's a matter of those folks actually educating themselves to be able to make that part of their model, the way that indie artists have to find a way to become businessmen and not just be creators and artists, but have a little bit of a business hat on them. So do, I think, webcasters who want to be indie webcasters have to find a way to understand how to be their own businessmen too.
I mean, the bottom line is there has to be a webcaster, small webcaster's exception. What happened is tragic. Like, it's not fair. It's ridiculous. But to go with the whole education standpoint, what I think a lot of people don't understand, like, you've got to understand, A, what rights you have. That's kind of a lot to do with your exploitations. But in my personal opinion, she can speak of it. One of the reasons I think this all came about is you have people like Last FM who sold for $280 million. They paid $20,000 to Sound Exchange. They built businesses off all these labels and sold it for $280 million and paid nothing. This has to stop. Clear Channel, billion-dollar business, never paid a penny to the labels. Ridiculous. MTV, billion-dollar business, never paid a penny to labels. This is a huge, huge problem, but people don't realize exactly what's going on. And you've got to understand too, like, what rights do you actually control? Because that's gonna make a big difference into how you're exploiting your music. I mean, what Red Light does is, in my opinion, they're the best in the business. Everyone should look at what Corn has done. I think a lot of people don't even realize just how great they are. He's basically gone in and got affiliated with, like he said, merch, record labels, everything. That, in my opinion, is the model for the future, and everyone should look that way. But for me personally, you know, I've got some labels that only control record royalty rights. That's it. So I cannot count on revenue streams from touring, merchandise, etc. There's one so-called social network that's not MySpace right now that's on-demand streaming everything, okay? Everything. They're going around telling independent labels, oh, well, yeah, sign this deal here. There's no floor. There's no DMCA floor at all. Oh, well, let me tell you, right, we're the biggest affiliate of iTunes. They're saying, oh, on-demand stream this will pay you 50% of the ad revenue, and then you're going to sell all this on iTunes. I got news for you, man. I've looked at all the statements before. Rhapsody statements with subscription services and permanent downloads. Napster statements, subscription services and permanent downloads. On-demand streaming of a full catalog does not lead to permanent download sales. I've never seen it.
Exactly.
I've seen these statements. I've seen statements from these supposed on-demand, from the supposed social network. They do not lead to sales, okay? It's ridiculous. But independents, a lot of people don't realize that. And so as a result, I got news for you. Anyone who's doing these deals, when you get your first statement, your calculator better have 10 decimal points, because that's what your royalty rate per stream is going to be. Nothing. Nothing. Okay, now, difference is with Michael, he's got touring, he's got merch. Like, for him, it's okay to give away a lot of tracks because he's going to make it in other ways. And I totally understand that. And I'm fully supportive. Like I said, Promonet, we give away a few tracks of this, a few tracks of that, because it's going to instigate and get people to go buy more. But, like, this is not good, man. I mean, like, you guys have to, the whole theme, I think, to be should be education. Educate yourself on what's going on and learn the marketplace and realize what's going on. And realize, like, the independents as a whole have to stand up. I mean, that's just the bottom line. They don't realize what's going on right now. It's ridiculous. Subscription services, for instance. Independents don't know what a per subscriber fee is. So a lot of times these subscription services, they won't even tell me the number of users they have. The reason they won't is because they don't want me to look at it and go, oh, so you're charging $15 a month, but our gross revenue pool, there's only like $3 a month. Meanwhile, the major labels are getting 50% guaranteed per subscriber to a revenue pool. The end result, the independents, in my estimates, are getting 200% less than the majors. So let me ask you this. How would you feel if all of a sudden the independents, when they sold CDs, their wholesale, what they got paid was 200% less? It's a joke. It is a joke. But until people start educating themselves and go out there and start asking for it, I mean, I'm only one person, you know, and I represent a large body of rights holders, and we're all about giving people opportunities. So there are times when the CEO is like, all right, Pierce, you got to chill out, man. You know, we got to give people their chance. So, like, if everyone goes out there as a whole and, like, pushes for this, Amazon, prime example, read Billboard 3 weeks ago. Amazon is overpaying the majors and taking advantage of the independents to compensate for it. I mean, it was spelled out in the article. That's what they're doing. This has to stop. But if the independents as a whole do not educate themselves and realize we're getting screwed, it's like everyone, like, independents as a whole, like, you better throw your matches on the floor, break out the bats. Like, it is all at war right now, and people don't realize it. People do not realize how bad it is. I mean, it's a great time to be an independent artist, especially if you got Red Light. I mean, it's like, it's great. But if you're an independent label, you better start learning to diversify and start learning to learn the marketplace. Because as digital moves up, my biggest fear, and I tell the CEO all the time, is like, I don't want people all of a sudden to wake up one day and realize, like, I mean, we're getting, you know, it'll be over. It's like by the time you realize how bad you've been screwed for so long, it's like if the subscription services take off now, and we're getting this bad rates, it's going to be a lot harder to, you know, negotiate later on. That's why I want everyone to push. BMI, what BMI does better than everybody, in my opinion, with these ad support services, they're the only ones that I've ever seen. I've seen the major label forums. They go out there, they want to know, they call it run of site advertising, which basically is advertising that applies to the entire site. BMI wants to know number of page views, number of music page views, because they will use that pro rata fraction to try to make sure the appropriate amount of run-of-site advertising is getting contributed to the gross revenue pool. Now, no one else is asking for that. They should be. These supposed social networks out there that are ad support only, they don't want to give us that information. It's ridiculous. It's easily accounted to. So like everyone out there, please educate yourself.
And on the artist rights side, it's like Tanya was saying earlier about that artists need to respect themselves. It is about saying, when this webcasting issue came out, it was the decision of the Copyright Office this past March to increase the rates of digital performance royalties that webcasters had to pay into Sound Exchange on behalf of recording artists and record labels. When that decision came out, the webcasters had a fabulous PR campaign to present a propaganda, to put out their propaganda that was saying that this was a fight between major labels and small webcasters, poor small webcasters and major labels. But the reality is Sound Exchange is a board of 18 members. 9 represent the label side and 9 represent the recording artist side. When I say that 9 represent the record label side, 3 of those folks are the independent labels, and the other 6 are the major label representation, and 9 recording artists. So that if you count it up, the majority vote, the 2/3 vote of the board are recording artists and indie record labels. It was that decision against the 90% pool of money that was coming in from large webcasters, Microsoft, Yahoo, AOL, MTV networks and such, that were basically fighting but putting up a shield of sorts, using small webcasters and non-commercial webcasters as basically a way of saying, look at our campaign. We're needing to take care of this community over here of small webcasters and non-commercial webcasters, and we're fighting against this big, corporate giants. And it wasn't that case at all. That is not the situation. What was important was really the story that needed to get out was that here were some large corporations like Yahoo and AOL and such that were yet again trying to reduce the amount of money that they have to pay for the major inputs of their businesses, and here, namely, recording artists and indie record labels. That's really the story. That's the story that didn't get told so well. And what it really took was, it takes recording artists and indie record labels to stand up and to be educated and then stand up and say something, to say, no, we value our music, we value our investments in music, and that we do need to be fully compensated when, as you were stating, there are businesses out there who are using our product as the major inputs into their businesses. It brings me to the latest issue that artists and labels can really fight for right now, which is, it's called the Music First campaign. And Music First is a coalition of which the Recording Academy is part of, Sound Exchange, the musicians' unions, AFM and AFTRA. There's about 12, 13 parties, and it's growing. There's over 160 founding artist members, and you can actually go to musicfirstcoalition.org, and I highly recommend going and taking a look at this website. It's basically a campaign that was launched on June 12th, to ask for fair pay from terrestrial broadcasters for regular radio, terrestrial radio, to have to start paying a performance royalty to the owners of the master sound recording copyrights and the performers on the records every time they spin a record. If you look at the billions of dollars that are being made by the radio industry, and that they don't have to pay a royalty to the music industry, to a certain section of the music industry, namely artists and labels, it's a travesty. And the fact that the rest of the world, the developing world, as I was saying earlier, is honoring this right, this full public performance right, and that the U.S. is along the lines of China and Rwanda and Iraq in not protecting the rights of their artists and labels in this way is such a travesty. So I do also ask that all of you sort of jump on board, get involved, and here is an area that you can actually, that there's going to be legislation introduced by Congressman Berman, who's the chair of the Intellectual Property Subcommittee on the House side, very soon, and we'll be needing everybody in every area of every constituency to get on board signing petitions, writing their congressmen and senators, and actually the Recording Academy and Sound Exchange have put petitions up on the websites. I do believe the Recording Academy is
Anita,
up there.
I'm sorry. Can I ask you a question though? I mean, and I hear your argument, and
Okay.
I respect you, and especially what Sound Exchange does. But who benefited from them crushing all these webcasters, right? I mean, the artists didn't benefit from it, really, and basically the only ones that benefited was the major companies, and there is that argument that basically the minor communities are not being served because that's why these things spawned up. These do not spawn up if people are being served. You do not get turmoil and unrest if everyone is happy. It's impossible, right? But so what you have are these companies that are saying, look, here's my radio stations, but they don't acknowledge this sector of jazz, this sector of classical, this sector of this genre of music, whatever else. So they go out there, and once again, it's passion because it's proven they're not making any money from it. There is not one of those minor webcasters that basically, they look at their books and said, wow, you're making millions of dollars from this. You're making $100,000. Majority of them were not even taking any type of pay whatsoever, even banner ads for the services, right? And I guess the other thing about it is that when we're talking about what the radio stations are doing, I'm with you on that. I think the radio stations need to be pay their fare of it. But once again, who is instigating the sales of this music? Radio. So where is the balance with that? If radio is going to go out there and play this song, and someone's going to like it and go out there and purchase millions of copies of it because of this radio station paying for it, do they not deserve a little leniency a little bit in trying to help this record company make this money by the people going out there and doing this? This is just a couple questions.
Absolutely. We're acknowledging that we're not saying there's absolutely no promotional value to radio. I don't think anyone's saying that. I think what we're saying, though, is that music needs to be valued. That input, that creative input and that investment needs to be valued. And that's why we're not saying, oh, give us 50% of what you make. That the rate is discounted to a great degree as to what they have to pay, what the broadcasters and digital services have to pay. It is taking into account that there is this importance for a slight bit of promotion. But, I say slight bit because there's so many studies out there, and there's more being produced, showing that the listen on radio and the listen on, I'll just say radio in general, terrestrial or digital, is actually becoming substitutional for the purchase. So where the income is, and in fact, there's studies all over the place showing that folks only have a certain amount of hours in their day to listen to music and consume music, and that these services, satellite radio, internet radio, regular radio, are actually filling up their hours, and that a lot of folks are not going out buying downloads and going to the store and buying records or buying records online because they're kind of getting their fill from what's getting streamed and broadcast out there. And that substitutional power that substitutional concept is something that it needs to be taken into consideration when we're debating this idea, because it is supplanting the sales that are and the ability to make money out there by the music industry. Anyhow, what I think is, I think it's really a hybrid, that there's promotional value, but there's substitutional systems going on out there, and that we're not saying let's have half your business. We are saying let's get this much, a fraction of a penny every time you spin a record, or this much little teeny weeny percentage of your revenue in order to be able to sustain ourselves as an industry and sustain our careers.
Yeah. No, we have about 5 minutes left, and I lied earlier when I said I was going to leave a lot of time for questions, but I will try to fulfill that as much as possible right now.
Let me say one thing about this. This is my understanding from reading about it, and I think it's kind of gotten lost in the shuffle here. Yes, absolutely, unequivocally, there has to be a small webcaster's exemption. It has to happen. I think one of the reasons we're having a tough time making it happen is because it's very difficult to define what gross revenue is. And there's a lot of fights out there trying to determine, like, oh, what would make a small app, what should be considered a small webcaster's exemption. And let me tell you one thing, the biggest problem here is Pandora should not be the lead on this. Oh, poor Pandora. They raised $30 million, man. They are the problem. I've been on panels with Tim. I've told Tim that. I've gone to the small webcasters like Soma FM who are getting screwed. How can you let this guy be your poster boy? He should not be your poster boy. He had $30 million. He is not trying to be profitable. He is the problem. There needs to be a small webcaster's exemption that addresses the OZs, the Soma FNs, but it has to be fair for these guys. It has to be a way that they can still make money and be profitable. And the problem is, man, it's so hard to define gross revenue, net revenue. That's why in the movie industry, there's no such thing as net. If you're getting a percentage of net profits, you're getting a percentage of zero. And that's why everyone is like so overwhelmed. How do we define this? How do we define this? Blah, blah. That's the problem, I think.
The three-judge panel at the Copyright Office who made this decision did look at a percentage of revenue formula for internet radio, and they did find a difficulty in creating a definition because of the various business models out there. However, after this decision came out now, Sound Exchange has offered to small webcasters, and we have come up with a settlement for small webcasters, which is that we are offering the old 2002 Small Webcasters Settlement Act, which is a piece of legislation that came up because back in 2002, or previous to that even, the small webcasters were coming up with, wait a minute, we can't afford the rates that were set. And there was a piece of legislation that came out called the Small Webcasters Settlement Act, what we call SWISA, SWSA, that allowed for what the community of small webcasters felt was agreeable to allow their businesses to survive. And we have extended that to small webcasters to go ahead to be able to stay alive, paying the old 2002 SWISA rates. So far, only about, I think, 33 small webcasters have come and adopted that, but it is out there. It is the offer we have made to the small webcaster community, which seems to be working for most folks.
I wish we would just admit that all of them ganged up and said, let's wipe out these little guys. I mean, that's the bottom line. That's what they did. They all got together, the labels, the broadcasters and stuff, because they were the only ones not affected by it. And they said, let's crush this because we only have 95% listenership now instead of 100% of radio listenership because of these internet broadcasters.
I'm sorry. Who tried to crush it?
I mean, basically, the broadcasting companies funded a lot of that act and everything because they were concerned about the internet broadcasters taking their portions of shares. The record labels were doing it because they were saying, well, we don't know how big this is going to get. So, I mean, that's what really happened. So when we're talking about this three-judge panel, yeah, three-judge panel funded by boom, 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 boom.
The three-judge panel came about because... The three-judge panel came about because the webcasters asked for that process because they weren't happy with the proceedings that happened prior to that and how costly, I mean, actually there's a whole story about it, but how costly and how time-consuming, and they didn't feel that process was fair, so they asked for this sort of process. And now, again, they're unhappy with the decision, but they did ask for that process to happen where there would be judges and it would be more of a trial litigation sort of process to figuring out what the rate would be. It's not a perfect world, but it is important, I think, as a music industry, and I feel like I'm speaking to mostly an audience of the music industry, to continue to say that our product has to be valued. And if we just have to be careful about going down the slippery slope of saying that we're going to be giving away our product for free, at FMC, at the Future Music Coalition Policy Summit. Somebody at a panel said, where did things change? When did it become voluntary to pay for music? It's not voluntary to pay for a loaf of bread or a gallon of milk, and yet that is what's happening here. There's this mindset now of the fact that there's a lot of folks out there thinking it's voluntary to pay for music, and we just have to make sure that we're not going to go, yes, we recognize that there are businesses helping us, including radio and digital services are part of our team as the music industry. We absolutely need them to create diversity and a full and vibrant music culture. However, we can't do it as an industry for absolutely free, because that devalues what we're doing here. So there does have to be an interplay, absolutely, and I will stop.
Anyway, there are passionate organizations and people, and all these people are here to sort of help the independent aspect of the music industry thrive. So thank all the panelists, and I think we've got another panel coming up right away.